Good evening and welcome to an online meeting of the Burbank Planning Board. Today is Monday, August 24th, 2020. The time now is 6:03 p.m. and I declare this meeting open. Before we begin our meeting, there will be separate periods of public comment tonight. One of the public hearing and one general public comment period towards the end of the meeting for comments on any matter concerning city business. Persons speaking during the public comment period associated with the public hearing may address the planning board regarding the public hearing item only. Persons speaking during the general public comment period may provide the planning board oral communication on any matter concerning city business. If you would like to participate in the public comment periods, please call 818-238-3335. We will announce when the phone lines are open for each period of public comment. Tonight, I will be doing the invocation, and Vice Chair Rizzori will conduct the flag salute. Please rise for the invocation. Heavenly Father, as we begin this meeting, we ask that you would guide our thoughts and give us the wisdom to engage in sound deliberation. May our conduct create an environment of cooperation and kindness for all. Thank you for the opportunities you give us to serve you and this great city, and please help us to accomplish our goals. In your name I pray, amen.
Please join us in saluting our flag. I pledge
allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America
and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Clerk, please conduct the roll call.
Board Member Hadian,
I'm here.
Board Member Gamboa,
Here.
Board Member Liu,
Present.
Board Member Rosati,
I am here.
and Chair Atukinian.
Present.
All members are present.
In order to balance the health risk associated with COVID-19 and the public's right to conduct the people's business in a transparent and open manner during the current state of emergency and in the interest of public health and safety, board members will be participating in an online planning board meeting. City facilities are closed to the public until further notice, and the public will not be able to physically attend today's meeting, unfortunately. The city is providing alternatives to in-person attendance for viewing and participating in planning board meetings. In lieu of in-person attendance, members of the public may participate in the public comment period by calling 818-238-3335. Any announcements?
No announcements.
Thank you. There's one public hearing on tonight's agenda. Item 1. Now is the time and place for the hearing on project number 18-0006-999 concerning an application for development review, conditional use permit, and lot line adjustment at 624-628 South San Fernando Boulevard for a proposed new 4-story mixed-use building consisting of 42 residential dwelling units, 3,500 square feet of ground floor retail space, and 8,200 square feet of ground floor office space on an approximately 30,947 square foot site. The project includes requests for a state density bonus to increase the allowable density by 35%. Before we begin, do any planning board members have any legal or other conflict of interest relating to this hearing?
No.
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 No. Opportunity for excuse me. Have any planning board members had any communications, including written or oral, with the applicant or the applicant's representative or any other person?
No.
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 No. Mr. Ramirez, have the notices as required by law been given?
Yes, they have.
Are there any written communications on this matter?
Yes, in addition to the ones that was included in your agenda packet, the board members that are participating remotely were sent an email with 3 additional comments that were received prior to the meeting today. And the hard copies were also provided to those in attendance tonight.
Thank you for that update. Will the representative of the Community Development Department please introduce yourself and summarize the matter for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair Tukinian, Vice Chair, and members of the Planning Board. My name is Lisa Frank, Senior Planner in the Community Development Department. We do have a recorded presentation for you this evening. Before we go ahead and play that video, I just wanted to make a short request to the Chair and the Board, if it's okay with you, that after the presentation, if I could just provide a brief follow-up in order to be able to provide some feedback and acknowledgement in response to the correspondence that Mr. Ramirez noted that we received today, just given that those were received following the completion and posting of the staff report as well as recording of the presentation.
Well, what's the board's pleasure? I think we would welcome that, wouldn't we?
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Very good, thank you. With that, we can load the presentation. Good evening, Chair Atukinian and members of the Planning Board. My name is Lisa Frank, and I'm a Senior Planner in the Community Development Department. Tonight's presentation is regarding a proposed mixed-use commercial residential project located at 624 through 628 South San Fernando Boulevard. The project consists of a new 4-story building with 11,700 square feet of commercial space on the ground floor and 42 residential dwelling units on the 2nd through 4th floors above. The ground floor commercial is divided into 3,500 square feet of retail and 8,200 square feet of office. The dwellings would be renter occupied, with 5 dwelling units set aside for households qualifying as very low income and low income. More detail on the affordable housing component of this project will be provided later in the presentation. The project includes additional features such as ground floor publicly accessible courtyard area, 18 bicycle parking spaces reserved for the residential tenants and 6 that are publicly accessible, and amenities for the residential tenants including a pool deck area and gym on the 2nd floor, and rooftop open space. 2 levels of subterranean garage are proposed to accommodate the required residential and commercial vehicle parking spaces. Additionally, the project will include street dedication and improvements along South San Fernando Boulevard, Cedar Avenue, and the alley at the rear of the property to create Burbank 2035 general plan compliant sidewalk widths around the project site, as well as the planting of new street trees, repairing of curb and gutter, and street resurfacing. The project includes the following land use entitlements and requests: a conditional use permit to allow for a mixed-use project, meaning residential above commercial use, in the BCC3 zoning district. A request for development review to construct new dwelling units and new commercial construction exceeding 1,000 square feet. And a lot line adjustment to remove interior lot lines between the 4 existing parcels that make up the project site to merge into one parcel. Additionally, the project applicant has utilized a request for state density bonus. As authorized by state law, state density bonus allows for a 35% increase in dwelling units beyond the otherwise allowable base density in exchange for providing a percentage of those dwellings as deed-restricted affordable housing units. The criteria for density bonus is specified in state law. In addition to the affordable units being provided through density bonus, the project is also subject to the Burbank Inclusionary Housing Ordinance. Pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA guidelines, the project was determined to qualify for a Class 32 infill exemption. Staff worked with a CEQA consultant to undertake the required analysis, and this report was provided in Exhibit H to the staff report. The project site is located at 624 through 628 South San Fernando Boulevard, which is approximately half a mile southeast of Burbank City Hall. The site is currently made up of 4 parcels totaling approximately 30,947 square feet. The site is developed with 2 commercial office buildings, approximately 11,194 square feet in total, with surface parking in between. The site has its primary frontage along South San Fernando Boulevard to the south and secondary frontage to Cedar Avenue to the immediate east. The area directly east and north of the project site is primarily multifamily residential uses with buildings ranging in scale from 1 to 3 stories, including the 33-unit, 3-story townhome style development to the immediate east of the project site between Cedar Avenue and Elmwood Avenue. Immediately west of the project site on the other side is a 3-story, 18-unit residential community called Casa de la Providencia. Bud Overham Park and Community Center is located across the street along South San Fernando Boulevard, and further south of South San Fernando Boulevard is the IKEA, as well as a variety of other commercial and light industrial uses. The Burbank 2035 General Plan land use designation for the project site is South San Fernando Commercial, which is described in the general plan as being connected to the core downtown area, thereby providing convenient access to transit and the ability to walk to the shops and businesses in downtown Burbank. As described in the general plan, the South San Fernando commercial land use designation was anticipated to include a combination of residential units and a mix of commercial uses. The project is also located within the Burbank Center Plan within the South San Fernando subarea. The Burbank Center Plan similarly envisioned that new development within the subarea should emphasize mixed-use projects that include ground floor retail with office and/or residential above the ground floor on the east side of South San Fernando Boulevard, where the project site is located. The zoning for the project site is BCC3 Burbank Center Commercial General Business. Consistent with the descriptions provided in the Burbank 2035 General Plan South San Fernando Land Use Designation and the Burbank Center Plan South San Fernando Subarea, the BCC3 zone is intended for mixed-use commercial office residential development. As specified in the Burbank Municipal Code, or BMC, mixed-use projects in this zone are subject to R4 high-density residential multifamily development standards, with the exception of setbacks and landscaping of setbacks, which are subject to commercial zoning standards. This map also shows zoning in the surrounding area, which is predominantly R4 high-density residential zoned properties to the north and east of South San Fernando Boulevard up to Glen Oaks Boulevard, BCC3 zoned properties along the north side of South San Fernando Boulevard, and BCCM Burbank Center commercial manufacturing zoned properties on the south and west side of South San Fernando Boulevard. This slide presents the overall ground floor site plan. The overall building footprint is shown in the darker outline. The ground floor building area would consist of 8,200 square feet of office space and 3,500 square feet of retail space at the southeast corner. Office tenants would have direct access to a small outdoor seating area and a publicly accessible courtyard with permanently affixed outdoor seating, and a public art feature would be centrally located within it with access from South San Fernando Boulevard. The residential lobby is located north of the retail space with pedestrian access from Cedar Avenue. Vehicles entering the site to get to the subterranean parking would access a driveway on the alley side. The other areas within the first floor building footprint include the residential lobby, restrooms, ADA accessible parking stalls, truck loading, the electrical room, and trash and recycling. This shows the overall building footprint for the residential on the second through fourth floors. The 42 units would consist of 16 one-bedroom units, 23 two-bedroom units, and 3 three-bedroom units, ranging in size from approximately 678 square feet to 1,711 square feet. Each residential unit, with the exception of one unit on the second floor, would have private open space in the form of a patio or balcony. A 2,955 square foot outdoor pool and courtyard area is provided on the second floor, which is connected to a 1,135 square foot gym and rec room. These features serve as the amenities for the residential tenants. As previously noted, the project will include public infrastructure improvements. Specifically, the applicant would be required to dedicate an 8-foot portion of the property adjacent to the South San Fernando Boulevard frontage and a 5-foot portion of the property adjacent to the Cedar Avenue frontage to create 15-foot and 12-foot wide sidewalks respectively, consistent with the Burbank 2035 general plan. A 2-foot 6-inch portion of the property adjacent to the alley will also be dedicated, as well as a portion of the property at the corner to achieve a 15-foot corner radius at San Fernando Boulevard and Cedar Avenue. Collectively, these requirements will result in widened sidewalks around the project site, reconstruction of the corner pedestrian ramp to achieve ADA compliance, new street trees, and the closing of 2 driveway curb cuts along South San Fernando Boulevard. This slide shows the primary south elevation along South San Fernando Boulevard and includes both the 2D elevation drawing and the conceptual rendering. The building can be described as a 21st century modern architectural style that uses symmetry, flat roof lines, and limited ornamentation. The ground floor commercial is designed with taller floor-to-ceiling heights and large windows with metal sunshade canopies that help define the tenant spaces and differentiate the ground floor from the residential on the upper stories above. Additional architectural features include offsets in the building plane, recessed windows that increase a sense of depth and light and shadow effects, balcony projections, variation in material and color, and wall-mounted light fixtures. The centrally located courtyard breaks up and reduces the building mass in the middle and can serve to introduce more light and air onto the site. This here is the east elevation along East Cedar Avenue. The elongated element towards the middle provides some additional interest on the secondary facade. And as previously noted, the pedestrian entrance to the residential lobby is accessed from this side, where it faces residential across the street on the other side of East Cedar Avenue. And this is the north elevation on the alley side. This elevation also shows a portion of the proposed rooftop open space area where the landscape buffer would be raised above the level of the parapet wall to provide additional screening from the residential area across the alley. This is a breakdown of the parking required and provided for the project. The required parking for the commercial and residential are calculated separately. State density bonus law establishes the required parking ratio for the residential component, where a maximum of 1 space can be required for 1-bedroom units, and a maximum of 2 spaces can be required for 2- and 3-bedroom units. Based on the bedroom count, 68 spaces are required for the residential and 69 are provided. Parking ratios for the commercial uses are specified in the Burbank Municipal Code. Based on the amount of square footage provided, 12 spaces would be required for the retail portion and 25 spaces for the office. 37 total spaces for the commercial are required and 38 are provided. The project proposes the majority of the required parking to be located within 2 subterranean parking levels, with 6 of the required spaces to be located at ground level. The rest of the parking for the retail and office uses would be provided in the first subterranean parking level. Parking for the residential uses would be within the first and second subterranean parking levels with a gate separating the 2. In total, the project will include 5 deed-restricted affordable housing units throughout the building. 4 of these will be set aside for households that qualify as very low income, and 1 will be set aside for those qualifying as low income per state income limits. The affordable housing units are generated from a combination of the state density bonus request and the city's inclusionary housing ordinance. Under the inclusionary housing regulations, at least 15% of newly constructed dwelling units must be rented at very low and low income levels at a rate of 5% and 10% respectively, a total of 5 units in this case. This is calculated from the base density before applying the bonus density units. As part of the density bonus request, the project will be providing 11% of the units for very low-income households. The inclusionary ordinance allows these affordable units being provided as part of the density bonus request to count towards the required inclusionary housing affordable units. Therefore, the project's 4 very low-income units provided through density bonus also serve to meet the inclusionary housing requirement, with 1 additional low-income unit remaining. Therefore, in order to comply with the inclusionary housing requirement, 1 unit set aside for a low-income household is provided in addition to the 4 very low-income units. The affordable units will be deed restricted for a minimum of 55 years. A detailed breakdown of the affordable housing calculation is also provided in Exhibit F to the staff report. As mentioned, the applicant has requested a density bonus pursuant to California Government Code Sections 65915 through 65918 and Burbank Municipal Code Section 10-1-643. California density bonus law requires that cities provide an increase in the jurisdiction's maximum allowed residential density for developers who choose to include affordable housing as part of a development project, as not all jurisdictions have inclusionary housing requirements. The density bonus and required affordability percentages are specified in state law using a sliding scale approach. The applicant proposes to provide 11% very low-income units within the project in order to receive a 35% increase in the number of units allowed based on the zoning, which is 31 units. 35% of the 31 units is 42 units, as fractional calculations must be rounded up per state law. 42 total units are proposed. A key component of California density bonus law is that a developer can also request waivers or modifications from physical development standards that would be necessary to accommodate the housing development inclusive of the affordable units. In other words, a jurisdiction cannot impose a physical development standard that, if applied, would have the effect of physically precluding construction of the project with the affordable units and at the permitted density with the bonus units. Such waivers are not considered as variances or exceptions from the standpoint of the zoning code. There is no maximum number of allowable waivers specified in state density bonus law. As outlined in the staff report and resolution, the applicant has identified 7 waiver requests. The waiver requests relate to building height, number of stories, minimum front yard setback, lot coverage, and criteria pertaining to common and private open space. I will now go into these waiver requests in more detail. This diagram helps depict the request for a waiver for height and number of stories. As previously mentioned, the project is subject to the R4 high-density residential development standards, with the exception of setbacks. However, the BMC also requires mixed-use projects to have residential above commercial, and all residential building is not permitted. As a result, the entire first floor consists of the required commercial use with the residential units contained within the 3 stories above. In order to, therefore, construct all 42 units authorized pursuant to state density bonus and comply with the requirement that mixed-use projects contain ground floor commercial use, the applicant has requested a waiver to increase the allowable height from a maximum of 35 feet to top plate to 50 feet to top plate and from 3 stories to 4 stories. As previously noted, the developer is required to dedicate portions of the property on all sides for street right-of-way purposes. For instance, 8 feet will be dedicated along the South San Fernando frontage, approximately 229 feet 6 inches in length. The image at the left shows the building footprint relative to the property lines before dedication. The yellow shaded area is the setback area, where the building would be set back 12 feet 6 inches at the front before dedication. To the right, the area of dedication is shown in red around the perimeter. With the 8-foot dedication, the building at the same location is now set back 4 feet 6 inches, where a minimum of 7 feet 6 inches would otherwise be required. The applicant has therefore requested a waiver to reduce the allowable front yard setback. Additionally, the lot coverage represents the maximum allowable building footprint relative to the lot size, which is 70% based on the R4 high-density residential standard. Additionally, the lot coverage represents the maximum allowable building footprint relative to the lot size, a maximum of 70% of lot area based on the R4 high-density residential standard. Due to the reduction in buildable area resulting from dedications at the front, corner, side, and rear of the property, the applicant has requested a waiver to increase the allowable lot coverage by 2.5% above the otherwise allowable. For reference, the area of dedication along the front is approximately 1,832 square feet. The applicable R4 high-density residential development standard for common open space applies to the project. This requirement is calculated at a rate of 150 square feet per dwelling unit, or 6,300 square feet for the 42 units. This slide identifies the open space areas throughout the project. The areas shown in green would count towards required common open space. The areas in orange are additional open space not counted towards the calculation. As the project is a mix of uses with commercial on the ground floor and residential above, the applicant has proposed to meet the amount of required common open space by distributing these areas along the ground floor to be accessible for the public and users of the commercial space, the second floor, and the rooftop area. The R4 development standards that typically apply to all residential projects specify that rooftop open space can be provided but cannot be counted towards the required common open space calculation. Additionally, per the R4 standard, any rooftop open space is required to have a 6-foot-tall opaque wall around it and be set in at least 5 feet from the elevation that is set in the furthest away from the property line. In order to construct the 42 units allowed pursuant to the density bonus request, while providing ample open space dispersed throughout the project at the amount specified in the BMC, the applicant has requested a waiver to allow rooftop area to count towards the required common open space calculation, thereby meeting the total minimum required. Additionally, in order to maximize the usability of the open space areas, this waiver also includes a modification from rooftop open space design standards to allow for a 3.5-foot opaque wall with 2.5 feet of glass railing above, in addition to landscaping buffer on the alley side in lieu of a 6-foot solid opaque wall, and a request for the rooftop setback measurement to be taken from the building face closer to the property line in order to increase the amount of usable rooftop open space area that can be provided, while establishing a sufficient buffer from the residential across the alley to the north. For reference, the building face is set back 5 feet from the rear property line on the alley side, and as proposed, the rooftop area is set in approximately 6 feet from the building face. The R4 zone development standard requiring one minimum 50 square foot private open space area per dwelling unit applies to the project. As proposed, one dwelling unit on the second floor does not have the required private open space. The red arrow shown on the slide identifies the unit, which is 678 square feet and is located directly next to the common space pool area on the second floor. All other units have a private patio or balcony. Per the applicant, the unit without the private open space was reduced in square footage relative to all other dwelling units in order to accommodate space for a required amenity, the gym room, which is also located on the second floor. Additionally, the R4 zone development standard requiring direct views onto on-site open space or a public street applies. Alleys do not count as public streets for the purposes of this requirement. The project proposes to have direct views onto a public street or on-site open space for those units that are oriented towards a street or on-site common open space. Due to the configuration of the building and the site's close proximity to the adjacent residential building to the immediate west, some units cannot physically be constructed in a way such as to meet this requirement with all of the criteria applied. For each floor, these units are identified on the slide with a red star. These units would still have private open space areas with the exception of the one unit I've just described. The last remaining entitlement requested is a lot line adjustment, which is necessary in order to consolidate the 4 existing parcels into one project site, shown in red outline, by removing the interior lot lines. The lot line adjustment was reviewed by the Public Works Department and the Community Development Department's Planning and Real Estate Divisions, and, as conditioned, complies with all applicable requirements. Having summarized the details of the project description, affordable housing component, and density bonus waiver request, it is staff's assessment that the project is consistent with all of the applicable requirements necessary for approval, as outlined in the project findings included in this evening's staff report and the Exhibit A resolution. In summary, The project is consistent with the city's land use policy documents, including the Burbank 2035 General Plan Goals and Policies, the Burbank Center Plan, and the housing element, including the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, or RHNA, which establishes the city's housing production and affordability goals pursuant to state housing law. As described in the South San Fernando Commercial General Plan Land Use Designation, as well as the Burbank Center Plan, the area along South San Fernando Boulevard, including the project site, was envisioned to facilitate opportunities for residential units in addition to a mix of commercial uses that connects to the broader downtown area. The site location within the Burbank Center Plan is also appropriate for new housing in its close proximity to non-motorized transportation options, including a walkable distance to businesses and services within the downtown and proximity to the Metro 94 bus route, as well as a 0.6-mile distance to the downtown Burbank Metrolink station. The project's mix of uses, unit types, and affordability demonstrates consistency with goals and policies of the general plan housing element, including the goal to provide housing sites that accommodate a range of housing types and the creation of housing affordable to all economic segments of the community. The deed-restricted residential dwelling units set aside for qualifying very low-income and low-income households will assist the city in generating new dwelling units that can be counted towards the city's RHNA allocation that sets a goal for the city of facilitating the building of 2,684 dwelling units, a combination of affordable and market rate units, during the current general plan housing element planning period that extends from 2014 through 2021. The number of deed-restricted dwelling units would also be consistent with the city's inclusionary housing program. As previously noted, the mixed-use project is primarily subject to the development standards of the R4 high-density residential zone, with the exception of building setbacks and landscaping of setbacks. Apart from the specific development standard waivers requested as authorized through state density bonus law, staff found the project to be otherwise in compliance with the applicable R4 and C3 development standards as outlined in the findings for development review. Lastly, staff determined that the project's affordability component and waiver requests are consistent with the provisions of state density bonus law. This concludes this evening's presentation. Staff recommends that the Planning Board approve a resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank approving a request for a conditional use permit, development review, lot line adjustment, and density bonus for a proposed mixed-use development with 42 multifamily residential units above ground floor commercial uses, project number 18-0006999 at 624 through 628 South San Fernando Boulevard. Planning Division staff, representatives from the applicant's project team, and the environmental consultant are available should the board have any questions. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation, Ms. Lisa Frank. Did you want to proceed with the further comments on the material that we just received?
Yes, thank you, Chair Tukinian, for that opportunity. We received 3 comments in total over the course of today, so I'll just begin with one received this morning from, I believe, a resident. And this person noted that they were opposed to the project. They expressed some concerns regarding parking in the area, as well as the alleyway being used to access the driveway, and some concerns that that would not be sufficiently wide enough. They further noted that some concerns about COVID as it relates to retail being appropriate in that particular area, as well as just generally some questions as to the location of the project relative to the adjacent 18-unit building, which houses it's affordable housing project with folks with developmental disabilities. So they expressed some concerns about that. So I just wanted to point out a couple things as it relates to that comment. One is that, as referenced in the presentation, but just to reiterate, there will be, among other street dedications, a 2.5-foot dedication required at the alley per the Public Works conditions of approval. And this will increase the alleyway width. It's existing about 15, so it would be increased to 17 and a half, with the ultimate goal being a 20-foot alley, with potential future dedication coming from the other side. But that is included as part of this project, will help address some of those concerns, as well as as part of the final review and plan check, and it was provided in the conceptual architectural plans as well, is that there will be turning templates reviewed in more detail for vehicles of different sizes entering that driveway, to ensure that the driveway is lined up where it needs to be, to ensure safe ingress and egress for vehicles coming in and out of the driveway from the alley onto Cedar. And then in terms of the parking, as I mentioned in the presentation, the project is parked to code for the commercial component that's using the Burbank Municipal Code parking ratio specified for retail and office, And for the residential, it's parked pursuant to the ratios specified in state density bonus law, as I mentioned. So a jurisdiction can impose a higher parking requirement for those residential units beyond what is being provided here. And then, but that parking, we believe, should be sufficient for this project. And in addition to that, on the front there along San Fernando, there's 2 curb cuts for the driveways to access the surface parking. Those, as I mentioned, will be reconstructed and potentially could lead to an additional parking space on the street. Otherwise, again, the off-street parking is provided in the subterranean parking for the project. And then let me just scan my notes here, one moment. In terms of the appropriateness of the location, with respect to COVID, I won't attempt to speculate on what things might look like in a few years from now. This project still would need to go through the plan check review phase and a lengthy construction period. So, at this point, the developer is still pursuing their project. But as far as it relates to the city's vision for this site and for the area in general, as I mentioned, the general plan as well as the Burbank Center plan and the zoning itself really anticipates mixed use type projects in that particular area within the downtown. And it allows for convenient access to transportation and jobs and other retail uses within the downtown area. I don't know if Mr. Ramirez wanted to add anything to that particular comment, but otherwise I'll go on to the others.
Just Lisa, I think the first part of your comment, I think the video froze up, but I think what you were mentioning was the dedication of the driveway would be increased by another 2.5 feet. So it'd go from 15 to 17.5 feet. And all the turning radius as far as for vehicles being able to exit the parking facility would actually allow them to exit heading with headlights out. So I think the property just north of this location, the adjacent one, has parking that actually backs out right into the alleyway. So the design of this project would actually further improve that situation by actually allowing vehicles to exit out with the cars actually facing towards the alleyway. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. And they're required to provide that dedication as part of the new improvements.
Thanks. Sorry about that. Didn't realize the video cut out. So as far as the other 2 comments, they are pretty similar. We received 2 letters, one from the Californians for Home Ownership and the other from California YIMBY. Those letters were provided to the board just, I believe, an hour or so ago, and they expressed support for the project. They both cited the California Housing Crisis Act, or Housing Accountability Act, And so if there are any questions as to what they're referencing in those letters, myself and staff and city attorney's office, I'm sure would be happy to provide any additional detail about that.
Thank you, Ms. Frank, and thank you, Mr. Ramirez, for those updates. I will now invite the applicant or their representative to address the planning board. You will have a maximum time of 15 minutes to make your presentation.
Great. Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, my name is Jonathan Riker, and I'm the applicant's representative. And I'd just like to introduce the team members. I'm just going to speak for now, but with me in the meeting is Andre Debashian, Anashe Stepanian as well. They're both with the ownership team, owner of the property and the applicant for the project. Armin Avanesian is here. He's the contractor. Daryush Safai and Rod Mack and Farzad Ibrahimzadeh are here from the architecture team as well. And we're all here to help answer any questions you have. And primarily, I just wanted to say thank you for that extremely thorough presentation from planning staff. It captured everything. We really have nothing more to add other than we are grateful for the opportunity to be here and to, again, answer any questions you may have. We feel very positive about this project in that the property itself is a commercial property with a large surface parking lot. So it's, in our opinion, underutilized. So to replace it with a density bonus project, providing housing, some commercial uses, as well as affordable units is really a win-win for everybody in that no existing housing will be displaced, and you have an opportunity to enhance the city's goals of providing more walkability, mixes of uses, and especially affordable housing. So we're very happy with the opportunity to do this. Planning staff has been incredible working with us to help fine tune the project. Originally, we were planning to do, well, we proposed a 5-story building, but realized that a 4-story building was more appropriate with the neighborhood. And hence the request for the various waivers to be able to provide the affordable housing as well as the market rate housing and the commercial uses. Otherwise, thank you to the board. We're happy to be here again and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Riker. We'll now open the public hearing to hear from any persons who wish to speak on this matter. Each person may address the planning board for a maximum time of 3 minutes. To address the planning board, please call 818-238-3335. The phone lines are now open. Please bear with us, as it may take a couple of minutes for the first callers to get through the line. I'll give it a couple of minutes and let's see if we have any callers. Again, for those who wish to call and comment, number is 818-238-3335.
Chair Atukinian, looks like we have one call in the queue. Please hold.
Audrey, you are now live with the planning board.
Good evening, Andre. Is it Andre?
Audrey.
Audrey. Yes, good evening and welcome. You have a maximum time of 3 minutes. We're listening.
Thank you. So I've been a resident of Cedar Avenue for 34 years. I've seen it move from single family homes to apartment complexes. And I just wanted to know how a 42-unit dwelling would help the rest of Cedar Avenue. I know that the sidewalks will be widened. There will be like trees planted around the project. But I want to see how that will benefit the rest of the street, which seems to be neglected. Will they be paved? Will they repave the street? Maybe plant trees like all the way down Cedar? Because if the residents there will have to have an increase in an already high density area with 42 unit dwelling. I'd love to see how that would benefit the rest of the residents in the area.
Well, Audrey, I don't think I'm in a position to answer that question. Perhaps Mr. Jonathan Riker would like to take it up.
Sure. Yeah. As was mentioned before, we will improve the alleyway adjacent to the building. There will be landscape improvements, street dedications. So there will be some physical improvements just in the immediate area of the project, not necessarily down the road. But in general, we feel that by having a project such as this with a mix of uses, new residential uses, it will add more vitality to the area and provide opportunities for those who live nearby to use the commercial building, as well as hopefully promote just general improvement and other opportunities in the area, which will enhance the lives of the people that live there. So there's not a lot where we can do as far as improvements other than those at the immediate vicinity of the project site. But again, it's our hope that this will enhance the neighborhood by having a new project that really provides important uses for the city.
Thank you, Mr. Riker. Audrey, do you have any other comments?
I guess that's all the comments. She's off the line now.
Oh, all right. Thank you for the call.
Chair, if I just recognized by the chair.
Yes.
Just want to make sure if we can get through the comments, and then at the end, what we can do is we can go through all the responses to the comments.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Any other calls?
At the current moment, there are no more calls, but we still should let about 2 more minutes to let anyone come through if they need to.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
No additional calls in the queue.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. There being no further calls, I now declare the public comment period closed. Would the representative of the Community Development Department like to make any further comments? Ms. Frank?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to just to expand on what Mr. Riker was saying in acknowledgement of Audrey's call. I also just wanted to just kind of say that when it comes to, we hear the comment, and when it comes to wholesale or widespread changes to a streetscape broadly, those changes we find are pretty incremental when they're derived from private development projects, as is often the case, and is in the case here, because there has to be a proportionality between what a city is asking for and what a private developer can provide in connection to that project. So, but we do hear your comment, and I don't know if Mr. Ramirez, if you wanted to add anything on top of that.
I think in addition to Ms. Frank's comments and also the representative of the developer, one of the things that the community is benefiting, and those on Cedar, is that the physical improvements that need to happen along the adjacent right-of-way include not just widened sidewalks with trees, but they actually also have to repave the adjacent asphalt. So in other words, like the center line of the property on Cedar. So if those portions of the right-of-way are redone or they have to be resurfaced within that proportional provision that Ms. Frank noted. In addition to that, when they widen and give that 15-foot turning radius at the corner, you're actually improving line of sight for vehicles as they're coming down the street and trying to merge onto San Fernando. So, and plus we're getting 2 additional parking spaces, as Ms. Frank noted, on the street. So in addition to being able to move forward with, in essence, a code-compliant project, and beyond having to get the conditional use permit from the city for the mixed-use project, the project meets all the other requirements under city code and state law. So in essence, we are getting additional affordable deed-restricted units, market rate units, and you're all aware, it's noted in the staff report that we have a jobs to housing imbalance of 3-to-1. So even these 42 units are a step in the right direction. I mean, it's not a cure-all, but collectively, as Ms. Frank noted, is most development, unless it's done wholesale by the city through some large capital improvement project, is actually done on the backs of these redevelopment projects that happen, these infill projects. So if anything, the appropriateness of it here as opposed to further into the neighborhoods, in essence, helps build a neighborhood, extend it to the street on San Fernando, while still protecting the adjacent properties. So I think overall, as we noted in the report, this particular project, even with the waiver requests, is consistent with the general plan, is consistent with our housing element, and is consistent with the Burbank Center plan. So I just wanted to add that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Does the applicant or their representative wish to make any further comments? You may have a maximum time of 10 minutes for comments.
We have no further comments at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Riker, and the rest of the team who's joined you. Does the board have any questions of staff or the applicant?
I have a few questions.
Ms. Hadian? Was that Ms.
Yes.
Hadian?
Yes.
Yes, please go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
I have a few questions. Most of them were answered during the presentation. But the very important question is about the number of parkings. I remember that on the slides, I saw 68 for residentials and 38 for commercial and office area combined. So is that the total 68 plus 38 that's required?
Yes. Oh, sorry.
I'm assuming that's for staff, Ms. Hadian?
That's for staff or
Okay.
applicant. I just want to
Okay, thank you.
clarify. And so 68 and 37 will be 105. And how many has actually been provided? I tried to count the number of parkings on exhibits C12 and C10. I got 45 on C12 and 56 on C10, which is 101. And I believe there is a few on the first level when the cars enter the parking. How many more are provided at that floor, the very first floor that's behind the retail?
Sure. I'm going to start off by summarizing the parking requirement and then versus what's provided. And then I'll open it up to the architect team if they want to just confirm the distribution of those spaces. But for the commercial, and as I mentioned, we calculate them separately. So the commercial resulted in 37 total required based on the office and retail square footages, and 38 were provided. And then for the residential, it was 68 required and 69 provided. I believe the first level on the ground floor, there are 6 stalls. I can have the architect team perhaps confirm that if you'd like, but those are primarily the ADA stalls. And that's why they're situated on the ground floor, with the remaining spaces being in the garages and the subterranean parking.
Sure, yes. If the architect can actually clarify the number of parkings on P1 and P2, and also the area behind the retail.
Well, there are 3 on first floor. There are 10. I can.
I'm sorry, would you please refer to the exhibit where you're looking at so I can also look at the same exhibit?
I'm looking at cover sheet of the architectural drawing, building data, item number 10.
Yes, that's the parking provided, which is 107. I need to see the breakdown of the 107 on P1 and P2. I could locate 56 on P2 and 45 on P1. And if you can help me understand the remaining, the
Yes,
gap
there
between.
are. There is residential category and there is commercial category. On P1, we have like 10 we have 10 for residential on P1, and we have 35 for commercial on P1. Most of the residential are on P2.
So from S1 to S35 will be for commercial?
I have to look at the drawing, so let me take a look at you mean on P1, right?
Yes, P1, exhibit C12.
P1 exhibit C12, which I cannot see.
Farsad, let me answer for that question.
I see.
So,
Go ahead.
so for the commercial parking, it's gonna be from S1 to S32 on P1 level. And also 33 and 34 will be for commercial use up to stall number 35 on the other side. And for the residential, we'll be allocating S36 to S41 with tandem parking for a few of those slots. If we go for the first floor parking behind the retail area.
Which page is that? I found that it's the first floor.
Yes,
exhibit C14.
That's going to be on A-3.2. So we're providing S1 to S3 for commercial use for handicap and one slot for a regular parking. And on the other side, it's also 3 parking reserved for residential use. So all in all, on the first floor level, we have 6 parking stalls.
Thank you. DA means like?
Disabled access.
ADA, same thing, right?
Yes, correct, yes.
Okay, so we have 6 here, we have 45 on P1, and we have 56 on P2. Altogether being 101 and 6 107 parkings.
That's correct. The total is 107 parking.
So 107 is provided. Thank you. I have another question about the building height. You may be able to answer that question too. The building height on exhibit A7, which is, I believe, the conditions, is considered as A7, where we're talking about the waivers and the waiver to increase the maximum applicable building height. It's requesting the proposed height to 50 feet. 52.9 to top plate. And when I look at the drawings, exhibit C25, section AA, and I put together the heights that are shown, it will be a different number. Exhibit C25, let's just look at that number.
If you take a look at sheet A-4.0, which is the south elevation.
Yes, so that's pretty much the same thing as the section and the height difference that's provided on C27, exhibit C27, section D, which is what we have is, it should be 19, but it is 18 here. And we have 11.3, 11.3, 11.3, and the 3'6" parapet wall. So altogether will be 56.3. And when we look at the elevator height that is on, it's on the other section. That is excluded from the height. I'm going to tell you where exactly I got those numbers. So on grid A, we have 54.9. And on grid F, we have 58.6. Let's say if we even get the average, the median of the two heights, we will have the 58.6 minus the 54.9. It's a 4'6" difference. Divide that by 2 and add it to the lower height, which is the 54.9 plus the 2'3". I'll get a 57.0 inch for the building height. And this is before you add up the accessory structure, which is for the elevator room. And on exhibit C25, section A, elevator height is 15'6" if you look at that elevation. And let's deduct the 3'6" that we included in the building height. We're left with 12 foot of accessory height. That should be added up to the 57 feet that we already got for the building height. So the total of the building height and the accessory structure will be 69 feet. I just want to make sure that these numbers, it's not a big issue, but I want to make sure that these numbers actually match with the drawings, whatever is proposed on the resolution and the conditional use permit, to match with the drawings. And that you're going for 69 feet instead of the 50 feet, 52.9 that's noted on the resolution. So I leave that to the staff to make a note on that if they need to adjust that. And that was my question for the height. Honestly, this is all what we're assuming right now, because when you look at this building sections, we see like the 1'3" for floor thickness, which in reality, when we have the structural calculations, it will be probably a thicker floor, looking at the grid spans, especially on the north-south direction. So let's just make sure that the building height plus the accessory structure matches the drawings. If you want to review that, I appreciate. I leave that to staff.
Yes, thank you, Board Member Hadian. And I think you're kind of getting to the heart of kind of, as you mentioned, some of the things that come up as the construction drawings are fine-tuned. I just want to make a couple comments about height, and then I'm happy to have someone from the architect team, if necessary, to fine-tune anything. But there's a few things going on with respect to height and how we look at that from the zoning code. So this was not necessarily made as clear as it could have been, so I apologize for that. But there's a top plate height criteria for one. There's an average grade calculation with respect to height for two. There's a top of architectural feature criteria 3. And then finally, there's also separate criteria for things like elevator shafts and those types of equipment that might project up from the roof line of the building to accommodate required equipment and that sort of thing. So to unpack that a little bit, the height itself is measured based on the average elevation of the 4 corners of the lot. And that calculation, I don't have it up right in front of me, but I believe it was noted on at least one of the elevation sheets. Rod, perhaps you can pull that up while I'm chatting. But so that's kind of the first step, is confirm what is the average elevation. And that's actually represented I believe it's represented with a red dashed line on some of the elevation drawings because it's not a perfectly flat lot. So if you took the height measurements at different increments from the actual grade, you would get some variations in those numbers. But they first had to calculate the average. And I just found it just for reference. One of them is shown on Exhibit C22, which is A-4.1. There's a red dashed line showing the average grade call out there. So the 50 feet, so when you look at that and the overall height call out, you'll see 50 feet, the building height. So that's really to the top of the double plate. The definition of height really is meant to address the top of the height to the room of the highest human occupancy. So it really captures the building volume. And then separately, there's, again, a separate provision for architectural features. So a parapet wall, for instance, might be go above that 50 feet. But you are correct. I believe there was a mistake in the specific parapet height that was noted in the description in the resolution, I believe, and Roddick or someone from the architect team, you can clarify this, but I believe it was previously shown as 52.9 based on the parapet height, but was modified to address, I believe, a requirement of the building code or of OSHA. So that bumped it up just a little bit. But with the waiver itself, we believe isn't really, the spirit of the waiver is still the same in terms of the request to increase the building height by an additional story, and with it being sort of maxed out at that 50 feet to top plate. So again, I can have Rod or the architects perhaps clarify the specific parapet height, but that would address the 50-foot building height and how that was measured. And then the code separately allows for 15 feet above the roof line, above the top of the roof for things like an elevator shaft and the housing for that. So in plan check, we would want to confirm that they were complying with the maximum 15 feet for that specific provision.
I think, Lisa, I think the 50 feet that's also noted needs a recalculation, because when you add up 11, 3 times 3 plus 19, it will be more than 50. I mean, this is a planned development. They can go up to 150 feet. All that matters, they have to get sign-offs from different jurisdiction, different authorities, including the airport. So if the height for the building is like 55 or 60 or 70, let's put that on the resolution as is. The numbers don't scare me. I just want to make sure that what's on the resolution is actually what's on the drawings. So those numbers need to be adjusted. Also, when you include whatever number on the resolution being to top plate or overall height, including the accessory structure, that has to be defined. Because if you put only like, let's say 50 feet or 54.9 for the building, and then later they go for the sign off, no one knows that there is also accessory structure. And when they build the project, it becomes an issue because of the discrepancy. So let's clarify everything and make sure if the building is 60 feet, 70 feet, just to put that on the resolution as is. That was my comment for the height. And another question I have is for the number of affordable, sorry, not the number of affordable housing, it's 5 units, but do they actually have assigned parking?
The affordable units? The parking is just for the residential. It's not, the affordable units aren't differentiated, with the intent being that they're sort of integrated into the project and not singled out in any way.
And there is no requirement that actually parking be dedicated to those units, correct?
The parking requires each unit to have a certain amount of required parking. Whether or not the project actually assigns the parking, I think is a different question, but each unit is, a jurisdiction could choose to not require parking, I suppose, is another way to put but the requirement, the ratio is per unit, if that answers your question.
Thank you. And then on one of the exhibits, I think C18, I see the 5 units shown as also marked as 409, 410, 411, 413, and 414. Is there any restriction that what square footage or what number of bedrooms be dedicated for the affordable housing units? Because I see like a very large unit, the corner unit number 414 is also affordable housing. If that's intentional, perfect. But if not, they may consider like a smaller unit. That's my recommendation.
Okay. Thank you. And just what I would say generally on that topic is that the state law requires that those units, the affordable units, are in terms of their bedroom count and their characteristics reflect the market rate units, and that they're proportionately reflect those bedroom counts and that sort of thing. So I'm not sure specifically which units are earmarked for the affordable.
I think they have an exhibit for that.
Yeah, I believe they do. There's a table. But that's the idea for the affordable units.
And if
so
I can,
no restrictions that what they actually have to dedicate as the affordable housing unit. They can just dedicate any unit that they want, correct?
Well, they have to be not quite. They have to make sure the city, when we review their affordable housing plan, which is going to occur during the plan check phase, we'll be ensuring that the units that are the affordable units are distributed similarly as the market rate units in terms of the number of bedrooms, the square footage, and the appliances and things like that. So they're supposed to be pretty similar. I believe there may be some leeway with some of the finishes on the interior, but the general idea is that the smallest units shouldn't be, all dedicated to the affordable units. It should be reflective of the general distribution of the types of bedrooms provided in the project. So if it were all 1-bedroom units, it would be a little bit more straightforward. But since they have a mix, there has to be a couple 1 and 2 bedrooms that are provided as affordable units.
Thank you.
Mr. Ramirez?
Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, I think Lisa's touched on it, but just so it's clear, the unit type and mix has to be proportional to the overall mix of units on the property. She mentioned the affordability agreement that has to be, in essence, finalized. That all happens through plan check. To your point, Board Member Hadian, as far as the plans, I know between concept, multiple iterations of the project, and eventually what's presented to you, the conceptual plans that are here and the elevation details that are shown here will have to be noted since these plans are included as the conditions of approval. So what we'll do is, in the plan check process, what we'll do is refer back to these plans. There is a little bit of latitude if there is unforeseen conditions with the site during plan check when they go and do the analysis to, whether that number fluctuates a little bit, a foot up or down. But at the end of the day, the waiver request is still the same. In essence, they're asking for an additional floor height above what is allowed. That's the 4th floor. And as far as the overall height, they're still within that realm of a floor itself and not going to another floor, a 5th floor. So as long as that's understood, you're right, we will clarify in the final conceptual plans and also in the plans that are submitted for plan check to have them confirm and verify the overall heights from natural grade and finished grade.
Sure. Thank you, Fred. I have a couple of more questions. One is the setback. I know that they're providing 15 feet setback, 7 feet public right-of-way, and the 8 feet being road dedication. So this question is for staff. What is the future expansion of San Fernando Road? Assuming that city decides to widen San Fernando for 10 feet, it will be 5 feet on each side. So this setback will be suddenly becomes 10 feet, right? Although they have another 4'6", which right now from the curb makes their overall sidewalk 19'6". But what happens to these type of projects when like a road widening happens in front of the building?
I'm going to touch on this, and then Lisa can chime in. In our general plan, under the mobility element, the doomsday scenario or worst case scenario is that we would actually be widening roadways. So that's actually not looked at as the optimal situation. What we actually are looking at is widening the pedestrian pathways and incorporating in bicycle lanes. That's consistent with the complete streets plan. So I don't envision us widening the street. If anything, we may be narrowing portions of the street to accommodate bicycle lanes, but not widening. That would be a last resort. But in this particular case, and a lot of the projects that you've seen, especially, and this is, by the way, it's not a planned development, but it's a project that does require the conditional use permit and discretionary permit by you. But they've basically optimized the overall from edge of curb face into the property line. They've in essence dedicated land to give us a 15-foot sidewalk and parkway, which we can now go in, and they're paying for it. They're going to reconstruct and also put in shade trees. So the intent long-term is to either at least get one row of trees, at least 15 feet. But as you remember from First Street, that particular property was 22 feet of combination of 15 feet of right-of-way plus an additional portion of land that the developer included, and we're getting 2 rows of trees there. And then in Avion, that right-of-way and private area combination is almost 27 feet plus. So at any point in time, I think the rule I will say is we're going to optimize the sidewalk, the pedestrian space, and the bike, but we're not going to be widening roadways. I think they're wide enough as it is now, my personal opinion. I know the assistant director in transportation would agree, but you're right. If anything, this 15 feet will actually help if other properties are developed along the street. This will actually set that line. So in essence, anybody coming down the street that wants to do it will also have to maintain that 15-foot sidewalk.
Thank you, Fred. I have one question about the common open space, and I remember on the slides that there was a requirement for the perimeter of the common open space on the roof to be 6 feet wall. Right now, what's proposed is 3'6", and 2'6" above that as planting. I looked at exhibit C19, and well, C28 is the height, but C19 is actually the common open space. I believe that it's better to keep the 6 foot as a wall because it's in a higher level, and 2 areas of the common open space are directly facing the street. So a plant is not a safety barrier and is not a railing. They may put planting and railing inside, but just for the safety hazard, I believe it's important to have fixed elements versus only the planting to reach the 6 feet height. If they don't want to stretch the 6 feet opaque wall from ground to 6 foot, they can do the railing for the 2'6" above that. But that's definitely a safety. I know that building and safety will look into that, but just to include that in their approval right now. And my last question is about the geology. Has there been any geology done for this project?
Thank you, Board Member Hadian. As I mentioned briefly in the presentation, the project was determined to qualify for an Class 32 infill exemption based on the CEQA guidelines. So there was not, as a result of that determination, the analysis done for that, it did not essentially trigger a need to go into a lot of detail on some of the the potential topics that could be covered under a full CEQA analysis, or even a mitigated negative declaration or something beyond an exemption. For or we also have the questions relating to that. We could address
Just wanted
those.
to know, they're only going like 22 or to 23 feet deep, so it's probably the lowest point below grade will be, let's say, maximum 25. I want to know if they looked into the distance from the lowest point below grade to the existing water tables. And also a question, relatively compared to the IKEA project, is this parking going to be deeper, excavating deeper than what IKEA has, or about the same?
Mr. Mears, I don't know if you want to field the IKEA question, but in terms of the excavation, because it wasn't subject to kind of a more extensive environmental analysis, the relative distance to the water tables and their excavation, that was not analyzed. I would invite our CEQA consultant, if you think there's anything salient, important that you'd want to add, you'd be welcome to do that. But and then Mr. Mears, I don't know if you have the IKEA. I don't have. I'm sorry, I don't know that.
Before we get too far, before we get too far along into that, I will say I don't think I actually started at the city until the grand opening of IKEA, so I don't have the specifics. I will say this, and then Starla can add to it, is when they submit their plan check documents, they actually have to provide the geo and soils report to confirm both the stability of the material that they're going to be digging into, because they're going to have to provide those support structures to be able to dig down and put in the subterranean levels. If they do at any point in time hit an area where there is water or the water table, then like anything, everything can be engineered to be able to work. They'll be able to do that. I think in general that is what we understood. Now, the reason I can say that pretty confidently is when we submit these projects and route them through the different departments, we submit them to building and safety. And our building official, Ron Takaguchi, actually looked at the depth of the cut that's being proposed. And I will say that was not an insurmountable issue to be able to assure that we're not going to have a water intrusion into the structure and undermine that subsurface. But with that said, good point. And I know because construction and design is in your wheelhouse, I know why you're asking the question, so we appreciate that.
I remember from, what is the project on Front Street?
Yes.
There is a stormwater that's passing through, and I'm not sure if
the stormwater is on Palm.
Underneath this site too.
Yeah, I think on 7th Street, I'm sorry, 77 Front Street, there's an actual storm drain that goes underneath that property. That's a little bit different than this particular case, but duly noted. I think, like I said, because it is in your wheelhouse, this is one of the requirements that's actually conditioned on the project, that they actually provide the geology and soils reports before they actually are given the authorization to proceed with the structural calcs and the full design. But Starla, I don't know if you want to add anything to it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ramirez. I don't have any further questions.
Ms. Barker, did you want to add anything to Mr. Ramirez's comments?
No, I don't need to add anything else. I think as Ms. Frank and also Mr. Ramirez stated, the CEQA analysis is very streamlined because it does qualify for an exemption. So that information and the requirements for the geotechnical report we know would occur through the development review and the planning process.
All right, thank you. Any further questions, or any further questions actually of staff or applicant? Yes, Vice Chair Rosori.
Questions for staff. Where would tenants move in if they were moving into the unit? Where would they unload and move into the building? It seems the alley would be a little tight. I certainly don't think it should happen on San Fernando Road.
Yeah, I can have the applicant team chime in as well. I would guess it would perhaps if it was quickly loading or unloading. I know sometimes people double park, unfortunately, on city streets to do their move, but hopefully, I think the alley would be more appropriate for that. Otherwise, people would be left to using probably Cedar, but then they'd have to go into the pedestrian entrance. So I think realistically, they'd either be using the alley or going into the garage to a parking spot, not with the truck, but just with their car, and then doing it that way. But
I'm just
I don't
wondering
know if-
about
I'm sorry.
ingress and egress, people coming and going, residents, and the commercial element, and then the moving element. So if the applicant maybe can chime in, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I can handle this. We have a loading zone in the alley. So that's where we anticipate the occupants to load and unload.
So when you say there's a loading zone,
Yes.
is there room for traffic to go around the vehicle? Is there a cutout? How does that work? Because the alley seems a little narrow.
Jonathan, there is actually a loading area inside the parking garage, right adjacent to the alley side. We're providing a loading square foot of 400 square feet on that corner area.
Show me.
Lisa, can you,
Inside the building?
that's correct, sir.
And what's the height? Can you get like a U-Haul truck in there? I mean, how are you gonna?
And for reference, while he's pulling that up, it's shown on a couple of sheets, but Exhibit C15 is
See,
one of them. There's a vehicle turning template, and it's showing the first floor layout.
So, Vice Chair Rosati, on sheet C15, architectural drawing A32.1, there is a designated loading area on this side here. So, in essence, a vehicle would back into this space here.
is that in the building?
It's inside the building, yeah.
How high is that?
I think they're asking for Vice Chair's asking for the interior height of that space where the loading would be going. I don't know if the architect knows it off the top of their head.
Let me take a look.
Looks like it's, Rod can confirm, it looks like it's 15 feet.
Yeah. Let me take a look. Yes, that's gonna be 15 feet clear.
I'm assuming it's enough for.
Small box truck. It's
Small
not
box
going to be a
truck.
big rig going in there, that's for sure. And that's on sheet C26A 5.1.
So that's really all we have.
Yeah, that and basically parking adjacent, being able to park adjacent to the building. So there is parking available on the street, but it would probably be loading and unloading. And that's something that traffic engineer and public works would be looking at as well. So if they need to accommodate a loading and unloading area, that's where they would do it. So
But it wouldn't be in the front of the building.
it could be on Cedar. It could be there could be a loading and unloading that's not specific to just the residents. It could actually be used for retail and office use as well. But I know that's something that they look at on the final layout.
Okay. And then the retail portion, is that one space or is that subdivided?
It's proposed as one space.
And could it be subdivided?
Because of the way our code currently works in terms of parking requirements, if someone were to come in and try to subdivide that space for 2 retail uses, it would be considered mini mall,
And it
which
would
has a
change the
higher
parking
parking
requirement.
standard. So by virtue of the higher parking requirement, it sort of is self-limiting in that way. So that's why it's proposed as one space. So unless they had requested some parking reduction from mini mall, or if a future tenant goes through a process like that, or perhaps an administrative use permit for restaurant use to subdivide it, it would be limited to the one space
So,
just based on
co-
parking on site.
so the conditions of approval say only one tenant in that space?
The conditions don't specify only one tenant. Again, the main limiting factor is the parking requirement that would make it pretty difficult to subdivide that space unless perhaps a discretionary review is requested in the future. So
we-
at this, as it's currently presented, it's not in the conditions of approval to be limited to one
Could we add it?
retail space.
The only thing I would caution is that there may be a subdivision of a retail space that occurs or a change of use of that space where they subdivide it into two tenant spaces. And it's possible that that tenant space could be at a different parking standard. In other words, less parking than what the retail space required. So I only caution that if we limit it to one tenant, what we create is a situation where if they can propose a use that has less parking requirement, we would basically prohibit them from doing that without having to go through a whole new public hearing process.
But as soon as they subdivide it, it changes the parking requirement.
If they do that, then they actually have to park it. So if they don't park it, then they wouldn't be able to subdivide it. So the fact that they have a fixed number of parking spaces, void of that, they wouldn't be able to parcel out that retail space without, in essence, triggering a different parking requirement. So the code already is hard-coded for that. If we limit it, then if they do find a use in the future that is less in parking,
Yeah.
then in essence, they'd have to come back to you just to do what, in essence, for other people would be an administrative review by city staff.
Okay, all right. And, what else? Retail, commercial. No more questions, I'm good, thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I just have a quick couple of questions. When do you anticipate the project to start, building that is, construction?
Well, if the project is approved, it would commence a 15-day appeal period. So if approved and then if not appealed, the applicants would be looking at preparing their full construction drawings for building plan check. So depending on how long that takes them to get all of that together, they would have to submit that to the city for all of the departments to review, in addition to the planning division going through the plans again. Relative to the conditions of approval. So that process, it depends on kind of the resubmittal timeframes, but it could take 6 to 12 months before a building permit issue is in hand.
And how long would it take to construct, roughly, this project?
I'll defer to the applicant team on that. I believe they were thinking about 2 years, but I'll let them chime in.
Yes, that's right. About 18 months if we, would be aggressive, but between 18 months and 2 years.
So roughly, maybe about 3 years from now, the actual building will be up there.
Hopefully sooner. But
Okay,
yes.
thank you. No other questions? Any other questions? No? All right. I now declare the hearing closed and the planning board will now deliberate. What is the planning board's pleasure?
And go ahead and,
Ms. Hadian, was that you?
yes.
Go ahead, please.
The project is a very good project. It's a proper fit for where it is located. And also the architect is a very well-known architect and has done many design works throughout Southern California, many projects. And mixed-use design is their specialty, with 8th and Grand, if I'm not wrong, being one of their highlights in downtown Los Angeles. They know what they're doing, and I believe that what they have proposed is proportionally right and architecturally good and design-wise conservative. I can support the project. The very tiny request that I have, if they could change the orange exterior wall panel proposed on their material and color board with a more neutral color, because we really don't know when the project will start construction. And color usually gets outdated, but neutral colors are timeless. That's the only recommendation I have. Other than that, very good design. And if it is approved, welcome to City of Burbank.
Thank you, Ms. Hadian. Who wants to go next? Vice Chair Rosati?
Thank you. I like the project. It helps with our much-needed housing stock. I think it's a great location, the walkability to downtown restaurants, shopping, stores. So the walkability factor, I think, is huge. And I think aesthetically, it's a very nice design. I definitely like the way the building looks. So the colors are, I found that whatever's on the color boards aren't necessarily what's going to happen in reality. So I don't think we can control that much of it, but or none of it. But I think welcome to Burbank, and I appreciate the design of the building and how everything was thought out. So thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Ms. Liu or Mr. Gamboa, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to echo the sentiments of my fellow board members. I think it's a nice project. It's a good scale for the area. The courtyard is a nice addition to the pedestrian space. It breaks up the building very nicely, so it doesn't feel like one big monolith. You don't get a whole lot of those kind of designs these days, so that's really appreciated. I think it's going to be a great addition to that stretch of the street, particularly since IKEA is so terrible interface with San Fernando Boulevard. It'll be nice to have something good there. And then people get to live right across the street from a nice little park. So I think all in all, well done, and I look forward to it.
Thank you. Ms. Liu, would you like to go?
Sure. I'm going to talk really quickly because I have a very upset dog right now who's making lots of noise. But I agree with my fellow board members. I think it's a well-designed project and really thoughtful in terms of using that space. And so I can agree with all the findings.
Thank you. I think it's it'll be a great addition compared to what's there right now. The mixed use, I think, will be a nice addition to the neighborhood, although there were some objections to the fact that there were some retail use there, that the retail use should be moved or restricted to the mall area. I think it'll be a fresh and nice change, and with the wide sidewalks, I think it'll be a nice addition. I do like the design because I'm more of a straight line guy, so basically the design is nice, the articulation is nice, basically. But I did hope to see some type of an awning treatment on the windows. When I say awning, I don't mean the traditional cloth type of awning. Perhaps just something mimicking an awning, a metal material made of metal, consistent with some of the other metals used. But the windows kind of look bare and minimum. So maybe that'll add a bit more pizzazz and maybe some. Just a suggestion. I think it'll be nicer to look where you have some type of a treatment for the windows instead of just flat windows. We do have that the hotel here on San Fernando that has just the flat windows, and then I think treatment for the windows, any type of a treatment. You don't have to take the awning into consideration, but anything else. So I understand the concerns as far as traffic. I think we have adequate parking. The turning radius has been addressed. So traffic, I think, will probably improve with this project on that street. You don't believe me now, I understand, but we're going to have to measure it later and find out if it's true. So I think traffic will be an improvement. So with that regard, I too will be able to support the projects. It does add quite a number of units to this city that we need. So with that, anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Mr. Atakunian, I have a question before making a motion. This is for staff, actually. So what do we do for the height? Do
I
we
believe
actually leave it as is, or do you want to adjust it and we approve as amended? Because if we conclude at what is proposed and the correct height is a different thing, then it goes to city council. So
We have provisions in the conditions of approval that allow us to make minor modifications. I would say that addressing and the final design and plan check, we can address that so long as they maintain it as 4 stories. So if you're collectively okay with the conditions of approval, I don't think you need to do much of anything else.
and also the wall panel, I'm not gonna give up on that. Can you also modify that to not be the orange color and more of a neutral color?
What's wrong with orange?
That's a tie. It's not sitting on a building wall. Give us the good material and color you gave to Eitan Grant.
Mr. Safai, I think this question's directed to you. We can't hear you, sir. Press the unmute button or mute button or whatever button.
While he's getting that lined up, if I could just ask for the board's indulgence on this issue is, we understand the concern. We understand that you want to, collectively, it sounds like, you want to see a good design. We're well aware of that. I think we acknowledge Board Member Hadian's concern with the color, but I would just ask that we are given an opportunity to work with the architect to come up with something that overall makes sense for the site. So we understand if orange isn't the take, let us take a look at it, because it could be a different hue, it could be a different color, but just, I guess we're just hoping that in general terms, there's provisions in the conditions of approval that say that the developer will work with the city to further enhance the architectural design. So we know that maybe that's a bit of a rubbing point, but I'd hate to kind of in essence precedent things that say that we're going to get to the point where we're picking the curtains and the colors here. So if you would just, under the conditions, it has provisions already, and I'm pretty sure the architect has heard you. So no doubt he's going to endeavor to try to satisfy you all in the long term.
Ms.
Can I
Hadian,
make a motion?
Ms. Hadian, I think at the beginning of your comments, you complimented Mr. Safai's architectural abilities and
Just that little tile color, everything is good. But I'll make a motion if
All right.
everything is good.
okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
A resolution of the Planning Board of the City of Burbank approving a request for a conditional use permit, development review, lot line adjustment, and density bonus for a proposed mixed-use development with 42 proposed multifamily residential units, above ground floor commercial uses, above ground floor commercial uses, project number 18-0006-999 at 624 and 628 South San Fernando Boulevard.
Second. Mr. Clerk, may we take a vote?
Yes, he can. We'll go in the same order as the roll call. Board Member Hadian,
Yes.
Board Member Gamboa,
Yes.
Board Member Liu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rosati,
Yes.
and Chair Atukinian.
In support.
Project passes 5-0.
Congratulations and wish you best with the project. Now is the time for oral communications. Now is the time for oral communications from the public. Any person speaking during this period may address the board on any matter concerning city business. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. To participate, please call 818-238-3335. There will be an approximate 5-second lag time between callers as we finish up with one person and move on to the next. So we'll give it a minute and a half to see if we get any callers.
We'll give it roughly about 3 minutes for them to get, roughly about 3 minutes for them to get through the pre-recording. We can start now, though.
Feel like I'm running a telethon.
Looks like we have one caller in the queue. 1 second, please.
Audrey, you are now live with the planning board.
Hello again, Audrey. You have a maximum time
Hi.
of 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. So I just watched the rest of the meeting that you guys had for the development. So as far as, I heard what your response was to my previous question. So I was curious, who do you get in touch with if you want improvements done to the rest of the street? I know maybe the developer isn't responsible for that, but I'm curious how the city kind of provides that service, especially if a lot of the residents on the street are asking for it.
Well, instead of a comment, it's a question, but I think Mr. Ramirez will be more than happy to answer it.
The only thing I'd ask is if Audrey has any more questions, and then I can follow up after she's done.
Do you have any other questions or comments?
So the comments can go in regards to anything in Burbank?
Yes.
In the oral?
Well,
Okay.
this communication section, yes.
Oh, so even like developments in downtown Burbank and things like that?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. So I have another comment then. My other comment is about downtown Burbank. I know myself and many others share that the streets and everything they are not clean. It seems to have been neglected, like the stairs and the public parking and everything like that. Like whenever I bring people from out of town, they're always complaining about how dirty it is. Like, does downtown Burbank try to upkeep, like does the city provide any services to keep the area up to date and clean?
Thank you. Anything else?
That's all.
Mr. Ramirez?
Sure. So to the question regarding how residents that are concerned with the conditions of the street along in their neighborhoods, we have basically recently passed a sales tax measure, of which half of those funds and proceeds have been set aside for actually making capital improvements throughout the city. That includes streets resurfacing, ADA compliance, and as you are well aware, when that whole process went through, I believe we had like $400 million worth of unfunded needs in that. But what they did do is through that process, there was in essence a commitment made to the the community and those that would be paying into that fund that a large chunk of that money, a good portion would go towards street improvement. So one thing I would say is, and as far as improvements to the parking facilities in the city and the streets, that's kind of a collective effort, both with city funds as well as public. There's a business improvement district in the downtown that actually looks at, pressure washing and doing improvements like that. But I will say this, the Public Works Department, who oversees both the city right-of-way, includes your streets and sidewalks, as well as the parking structures. They assist in maintenance and upgrades to those. The city is looking at kind of a long-term vision for upgrading those facilities and managing them in a better way for the downtown. So one thing we can do, Audrey, if she's listening, is if she contacts the city, we can put you in contact with the Public Works Director or the city engineer in the Public Works Department, and they would be able to provide you more insight because all the streets in the city are on a schedule for repair and maintenance, and they can maybe talk to you about, the current condition of your street, as well as maybe when it's slated over a multi-year improvement program. The idea is to make those improvements and then maintain the streets at a high level, but it's going to take some time to kind of go through the entire city and make those upgrades. But I think over the last year, they've invested over $7 million plus in street improvements, and the hope is with sales tax coming forward, whatever that revenue is, to make similar efforts and commitments in the long term over the coming years to upgrade streets. So Public Works would be the department within the city to contact regarding that.
You have a phone number, Mr. Ramirez?
I do not, but I will say this. If they contact our office at 818-238-5250, and they say who they're looking for, in other words, the Public Works Department, city engineer, or the Public Works Director, we can then refer that call to them.
Thank you.
Sure.
We will allow 1 more minute for any additional callers. There are no callers in the queue.
All right, now I declare the public comment period closed. Now's the time for reports from city staff. Mr. Ramirez, any reports?
No reports for today.
Thank you. Now's the time for the approval of the minutes from the August 10, 2020 Planning Board meeting. Any questions or comments or a motion?
So moved.
I can make a motion, but would you be able to add a note that I had technical problem in that meeting, during that meeting? The video did not work, so I don't know if that needs to be included. Please make a note.
Sure.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Hadian.
Thank you.
We have a motion and a second? Motion. Vice Chair Rizzotti makes a motion. Ms. Hadian, second?
Second.
All right. May we take a roll call?
Yes, we can. Same order.
Vote.
Board Member Hadian,
Yes.
Board Member Gamboa,
Yes.
Board Member Liu,
Yes.
Vice Chair Rizzotti,
Yes.
and Chair Atukinian.
I'll abstain since due to conflict, I wasn't able to make the meeting. Now's the time for I'm sorry.
Oh, well, the minutes still pass.
Thank you. Now is the time for introduction of additional agenda items. Planning board members may introduce new items for discussion, but no action may take place except to place the item on the future agenda. Do members of the board have any items to introduce? None? Thank you. Now is the time for city planner comments. Any comments from Mr. Ramirez?
I'll make it short. There is in your agenda packet a schedule of upcoming items for the next meeting on September 14th. Just want to make sure we have 4 items on the agenda, including the accessory dwelling unit requirements. We're kind of going through them and doing a little bit of cleanup. So we're looking at hopefully being able to bring that to you on the 14th, as well as the discretionary permits. And as part of that, there's an appeal of a single-family development permit in that. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention. It's included at your agenda packet as the planning board forecast. And then last but not least, I believe we are due to take another vote of the board to, for the chair and vice chair. I believe that's coming up, so we'll schedule a time. If it's not for the 14th, we'll do it as a meeting soon thereafter. Okay, so I just wanted to bring those to your attention. And by the way, thank you all for your patience through this process, and thank you for, even though we had one item, we didn't want to put more than one considering the topic and what's happened in the past. So thank you very much for your patience and your very good questions and all the effort you put into analyzing and looking at the project. Thank you.
Well, thank you, everyone. We'll adjourn to September 14, 2020. Today's meeting is closed.